This is a ringneck pheasant imported here in the early 1900s. It was the king of game birds, not only in Michigan, but many states around the Midwest. October 20th was always the traditional opening day. We just passed October 20th, but I'll tell you what, it was the most uneventful opening day. We walked the cornfields, walked the hayfields, walked the thick stuff, didn't get one pheasant. I'll tell you what, I didn't want you to miss the fun, so we're still going to take you pheasant hunting opening day. So stay tuned. It's Thursday night. I'm Fred Trost. It's time for Michigan Outdoors.
From the rugged shore and woodlands of the north, it's history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties we'll look around again, at all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan. And sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, and the stillness of the forest lies encased in Arctic cold, the wind might whisper through the trees, listen if you can, it tells you of the beauty in this state of Michigan.
Our opening day group of skunked pheasant hunters standing on a land farmed by Chris Kapp's dad. Chris is the new generation of pheasant hunters, a generation that never knew what it used to be like. Okay. Now, Chris, you've been hunting for 2 years. What do you think about our fabulous pheasant hunting?
Well, hopefully it'll get better.
How do you think it's been?
Not too good.
Not as good as the old days, huh?
No.
Of course, your old days started about a year ago. Chris is only 14 years old, hunting pheasants because that's what all the older guys hunt for. But without seeing birds, let alone getting a shot, how can he possibly stay interested? So you pretty excited about pheasant hunting next year?
It depends.
On what?
If I get a pheasant this year.
Well, you can understand that. No success, no enthusiasm. But what kind of track record does Chris have? What was his first year of hunting pheasants like? Did it get him excited about hunting Michigan ringnecks? What would be the difference? Well, how'd you do last year?
I only saw one.
Only saw one. Pretty meager hunting, Chris. But that matches our opening day action this year. We posted Chris at the corner of a swale, a marshy area bordered by hayfields and cornfields, ideal looking pheasant cover. Last year, Chris said they flushed a rooster out of here. And Bob Garner, who's hunted this farm in years past, said that this is always good for a bird. But in 1986, it's a different story. Chris and I waited at the end of the marsh as 3 hunters with 3 dogs made their way through the thick stuff. This is the kind of cover that modern ringnecks prefer if they're around. Well, we all began getting on the uncomfortable feeling that the pheasants weren't here, though. Every now and then we'd hear one crow, a rooster from somewhere out in the cornfield, but that was the problem. On this farm, like many farms, no corn had been cut yet. Every inch of the ground was covered by hay or weeds or farm crops. The birds were dispersed and evidently scattered throughout the cornfields because they sure weren't in the weeds. From dawn until mid-afternoon, we checked out a number of fields, pushing the dogs through the weeds and the swamp grass, places where pheasants stay after the crops are harvested, but we didn't even find one place where a pheasant had roosted in the weeds. That was surprising. So we left the grasslands and headed for the corn.
Up here over in this direction, and then we'll hunt it back down.
And as much as I enjoy hunting, I have to admit the frustration of finding no birds was wearing on me. And I wasn't alone in being a little disappointed. Ray Nichols, well, we fished on his charter boat for walleye in Lake Erie, and he charters salmon from Ludington. He hunts in the fall, and he lives in Monroe, an area that always used to have some of the best pheasant hunting in Michigan. When was the last time you pheasant hunted Michigan?
10 years ago.
Why the lull?
We've been hunting South Dakota, and when I come back to Michigan, I hunt ducks.
What brought you out today?
You and Bob.
Bob begging you to bring your lab along?
Yeah, said bring my dog out and we'll give it a little hunt. So here we are.
And how was it?
Like I expected. We got up a bird, but the corn's so high you can't see them.
What are your plans for pheasant hunting the next 10 years?
I'll more than likely still be hunting in South Dakota, but somebody wants to go in Michigan, I always buy the small game license. I like to hunt the ducks and I hunt rabbits and everything, deer and stuff like that. So I'll be hunting in Michigan, but if I want to go bird hunting, I'll go west.
Well, Ray Nichols is honest about that. He wants pheasants for the freezer, and they're a lot easier to come by in the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Iowa. These ringneck pheasants have been a real mystery. Introduced from European game farms in the early 1900s, the original ringnecks were more like domestic chickens than true game birds. They survived well around farms in the 40s and 50s especially, but then their big boom was over when farming changed. Now this is a typical modern Michigan cornfield. The rows are absolutely clean. Herbicides have killed all the weeds that used to provide food and cover in the corn for pheasants. Combined with early hay mowing, which kills the hens on their nests in the spring, ringnecks have not been able to survive the changes in agriculture. And genetically, ringnecks haven't been survivors either. That's why the DNR went to China for a pure blackneck strain of Sichuan pheasants that are smaller, tougher, and better survivors than ringnecks. Bob Garner thinks that this new strain, when it catches on, will be the pheasant of the future in Michigan.
We're going to be waist deep in them in about 10 years. That's about how long it's going to take. Pete Squibb and the DNR guys have a plan that should, in about 9 years, if everything goes right, and of course, the best laid plans, but it should be about 2 million birds available. And I believe it because the half-breeds are doing exceptionally well right now for being released last winter. 400 Chinese birds are going out in selected areas in March. They've also now bred the half-breed birds, half ringneck, half blackneck birds, to a full Chinese bird, and they've got the three-quarter ones, which seem to be even wilder than the half-breed. So there's all sorts of little things they can do to adjust this bird genetically to what's available in southern Michigan. And I think we'll not only see them in southern Michigan, but we're going to see a lot of the fringe areas up north have a lot of pheasants. And I'm looking forward to it. In fact, I'm going to have a lab next year that I'm going to have trained just for pheasant hunting because I believe we've got some good days coming up.
Well, Bob Garner is an optimist when it comes to pheasants, but I'll tell you my theory. The new pheasants won't live in the farm fields. They'll live in the woods with the grouse. The Sichuan birds could conceivably even become a pest to orchards, eating the buds or digging up seeds from newly planted fields. And if we're waist deep in them, well, we'll have to use smelt nets to thin them out. I do hope they work, though. Despite my lack of enthusiasm, not every pheasant hunter shares my feelings about a pheasantless opening day.
What does this do to your plans for pheasant hunting next year?
Nothing.
You mean you're still going?
Sure.
Will you ever stop pheasant hunting?
Oh, yeah.
When?
When they get 6 people to carry me away.
Tim Farragon, a pheasant hunting diehard, the last of a vanishing breed in Michigan outdoors. The real killer is when Bob Garner and Tim Farragon got back, they stopped at Garner's house and saw some hunters flush several cockbirds out of Garner's backyard. And Tim Farragon, when he went home, he found out that his boys got 9 roosters that they flushed up in his backyard. So we were just hunting the wrong place, no doubt about it. BJ's Sports Shop down in St. Joe says if pheasant hunters did pretty good in that corner of the state, that must have meant they got 1 or 2. Fishing is spotty. Hunting is pretty good, and the experimental turkey season has been good. How good has it been? Well, I'm going to lead off with a report on that in our trophy book. What an afternoon, the second day of the first season. All 3 of us, Rich Wales from Quinnipiac, our host on the left, and Bob Garner and myself all bagged our turkeys in Dickinson County. It wasn't easy hunting, a lot of stalking and strategy, but we ended up with some fine meals for this Thanksgiving. Rich's mom, June Wales, is 68 years old and holds her own as a deer hunter. This 11-point, which hangs on the wall, was her buck last season. We told her that that buck qualifies for a Stroh's Hunting Award, and she was real pleased to pose for the trophy book. Mike Herman from Battle Creek sent us a photo of a special opening day duck season accomplishment. Not for him, but for Casey, his Labrador Retriever. The 2 geese were a little much for Casey to handle, but she made a textbook retrieve on the duck. Casey is only 6.5 months old. Mike says she's a happy dog and he's a happy hunter. We've had some big bears taken this fall in Michigan. Ken Reed from Lewiston holds a monster he took in September, his 11th bear in 12 years of bear hunting. He wonders why I don't have a black bear category in the Stroh's Hunting Awards. Well, I think I will, Ken, for bears that weigh over 250 pounds dressed. And Ken's bear easily qualifies, yet dressed out at 400 pounds even, a big bruiser. And believe it or not, Michigan has a number of bears that are even larger than this. That's something, isn't it? At 2 pounds 6 ounces, this 19-inch Menominee whitefish is a whopper. It was caught at the end of September at the mouth of the Two-Hearted up in the UP, Luce County. Walt Coney from Beaverton caught it on a worm. And I suspect Tim Irvin from Lansing was also fishing for Menominee in Lake Michigan up in Grand Traverse County. He was using a worm at noontime a month ago, caught a 20-and-a-half-inch, 2-pound, 3-ounce brook trout. And because it lived in the Great Lakes, it's called a coaster, not quite as colorful as its cousins that stay in the streams. Bob Biankowski from Rochester says he fishes between 70 and 100 times each season for all kinds of fish, but every year he takes a trophy trip. Last year, his goal was to catch a 6-pound smallmouth bass from Chena Lakes in Antrim County. His research showed that the third week in October would be an ideal time. His homemade jig took this 21-and-a-half-inch, 6-pound, 4-ounce smallmouth. Congratulations, Bob, you did it, and you're our Michigan Outdoors Trophy Angler of the Week.
For years, biologists have been arguing that turtles, especially snapping turtles in southern Michigan, need some sort of protection by the Natural Resources Commission, seasons and size limits and also bag limits. Well, the legislature's kind of laughed at them, except for Representative Jerry Bartnick from Temperance, who introduced a bill that would, in fact, protect the turtles.
Okay, the bill that I put in, Bob, basically, we're having a real problem in the fact that too many people are trapping turtles. The price of turtles has gone up. It's like $6.95 a pound. And what's happening is the pressure from the taking of turtles, we're not allowing them to reproduce. They're being taken too young. And I want to allow the Natural Resource Commission to set a season on turtles so we can protect the turtles that are in the marshes. Once we lose them, it takes too long for them to grow up and reproduce, that we have to have some protection, and that's what I'm looking for. So we always have turtles in the state of Michigan.
So the snapping turtle's like the sturgeon. It takes a long time to get to maturity.
Yes, a very long time. And what happens is due to the pressure and people taking them, we're not allowing them to get to that maturity stage, and we're losing these, and you cannot replace them unless they have the opportunity to reproduce.
State Representative Tom Scott and Senator Mitch Irwin took a hardline approach to the poaching problem with new laws calling for heavy-duty fines and jail sentences, and it's already starting to work. Just recently, Judge E. Patrick Murray, a district court judge in Otsego County, gave a tough sentence to a couple of elk poachers from Mesik and Tustin. He charged them a $300 fine, a $150 oversight fee, $1,500 in restitution, $500 in court costs, a $5 judgment fee, and a $3 conservation fee, a total of $2,458. Now, not only did he kick a hole in their wallets, but he also gave them time to think about it with a sentence of 45 days in jail and a strict probation of 18 months, and a loss of hunting licenses for 3 years. Congratulations, Judge Murray. And good news to owners of the new rifled shotgun barrels. There was some question as to whether or not they would be legal for hunting in southern Michigan. The DNR says they are indeed legal. One of the reasons the law was interpreted that way was that slug barrels will not shoot a slug any further, but will deliver a slug more accurately.
You know, for all the hunting that's going on now, there's some fabulous fishing in some areas. You saw it in the trophy book, smallmouth bass fishing, for example. Bob, we have a question. There's some guy who, at some time of year, was catching smallmouth.
Yeah, Robert McLaughlin from Harbor Springs. He says, fishing around Mackinac Island last year, I noticed that the population of smallmouth bass was quite high. Every day we went out, we caught our limit. Why is it so high? And when are we going to get there?
Yeah, when are we going to get there and try some of that? Well, the population overall isn't necessarily so high. Just like in our pheasant hunting, it wasn't necessarily so low. The pheasants were scattered in the corn when we were hunting. The crawdads could have been attracting the smallmouth to a very tiny area, and that's why you were catching so many. But that doesn't mean that there were a ton of them everywhere like that.
I got to find that spot, though. Dick Clark of Vesterberg's writes and says, could you please explain the difference between Polaroid and polarized sunglasses? Is there any significant difference in their ability to enable vision to penetrate water? My brother-in-law insists that polarized glasses are useless for fishing, but Polaroid glasses are nearly impossible to find.
Well, Dick, Polaroid, like Bob Garner is wearing right there, no, they may not be Polaroid, but they are polarized or polarizing. Polaroid is a brand name. Polarize is the effect that you get. You see, looking through the lens there, that you can see the rocks on the bottom of the stream. We're looking through Bob's polarized sunglasses, which may or may not be Polaroid. That's what it looks like without the sunglasses on. So you may not be able to find Polaroid because those are just polarized glasses made by the Polaroid company. That's that.
In a nutshell.
Look for polarized. Now, in another nutshell, let's see if you can answer this question in our outdoor quiz.
Between 1970 and 1980, has the cost of hunting licenses risen significantly? In 1970, sportsmen paid $102 million for hunting licenses across the United States. But in 1980, that figure rose to over $222 million. Despite the fact that license fees doubled, the price of hunting is cheap in America compared to many European countries where hunting can only be afforded by the very rich.
Roger McCarville, Executive Director of Outdoors Forever. This is our 3 minutes here to talk about Outdoors Forever, like we do every week. Last week we had Grant Church on talking about crossbows, a very sensitive issue. For the first time, we got a couple negative letters about the handicapper involvement here on Michigan Outdoors, which sort of set me back a little bit.
Right.
Because the response has been so favorable. This one guy wrote, and he says that we're taking it too far by including so much of this on our programs. He says, I personally don't care to watch how a person hunts or fishes with one arm missing, or how a one-legged person hunts from a wheelchair or toboggan.
Right. Well, we see a lot of that, Fred, but I think the point that we're trying to make in Outdoors Forever is there's 1.5 million handicappers in the state of Michigan that are interested in how they hunt one-legged or with one arm or use the outdoors. And that's what we're trying to reach in Outdoors Forever.
Well, you know, evidently this fellow doesn't think that he'll ever be in that position.
Well, of course, I never did either.
Yeah, you didn't either.
There's a lot of folks like that.
Well, that's why I look at it as hunting and fishing insurance. If we find this out early, this is our best chance to continue hunting and fishing the rest of our lives. He goes on with some other normal beefs, I guess. Our federal bureaucracy has forced industry and municipalities to go to extreme costs, such as adding wheelchair lifts to buses, remodeling public and private buildings to accommodate wheelchairs and bathrooms and entranceways, and adding handicap parking areas. Right. You know how that always tees people off, the handicap parking spots.
Well, again, you've got issues there that they're red herrings. They're saying it costs a lot of money to make a building barrier-free. In actuality, it's less than 1% of the cost. But it makes it accessible to everybody. People in wheelchairs, ladies with babies, and the elderly climbing on the buses. The lift helps. The parking, if they give us free parking way in the back, nobody'd complain. But people need that close-in parking for their disabilities.
I guess the thing is you have to be in that situation and realize that there are millions of people in situations like this where they need that.
Or millions of people going to be in them.
The crux of it, what this guy says is, he says that please go back to the good informative outdoor shows you used to have. Quit catering to the special interest groups. We've gotten too far into a society with too many special rules for special situations. Boy, I tell you, I guess the only thing I can say is, what do you think duck hunters are, deer hunters, trout fishermen? We're all special interest groups. That's what Michigan Outdoors is all about on PBS.
And Outdoors Forever.
But you know, on the other hand, the handicappers or senior citizens or duck hunters aren't special. I think we all just want a chance to do what we enjoy doing, despite our limitations or abilities.
And if there's a way we can educate them through the Outdoors Forever, how to do it once you are in a condition that disables you, then we've won. And if we can educate these folks into, hey, someday you might be there, and if you are, it's all been taken care of for you.
That's what we're working on with Outdoors Forever. That's why we're going to continue with this 3 minutes a week right here. Our 3 minutes is up, Raj. From Grand Blanc has a recipe for you, which I guess you don't need pheasant. It's called pheasant with orange sauce. But if you don't happen to find one of those vanishing species,
rare pheasants,
you could use, I'm sure, many types of game. But you know, for a dry type of meat, I think this orange sauce
absolutely
makes up for the lack of skin.
Mm-hmm. It'll make a coating on it like a skin.
And the lack of fat, too.
And the skin pheasant, right there's the pheasant meat, Some of it's skinned and some of it isn't.
Right.
And I had a piece just a second ago that was skinned.
And like I say, this
And it
kind of
was-
makes a coating on it.
It does.
French dressing and orange marmalade. Now that will kind of shrink down, and actually the syrup is what you taste.
Oh, that is sweet and tasty.
Got onion soup mix.
I don't taste that onion soup
No,
at
you
all.
can't. The
Do you,
orange
Bob?
marmalade overpowers it, I think.
You must do something for it, though.
And just gonna mix this with water so it's not completely dry. You could put the orange marmalade right in here. Now, this is making your coating, actually. It's like a syrup, is what it's gonna do.
She calls for about 3/4 of a cup.
Right.
And then some French dressing.
Now, you can taste the spices in there. I can taste them. It's got a little bit of different...
You know, as we sit and eat this and look at it, it tastes pretty good, but it doesn't look very good
Not real appetizing right
when we
there.
were putting this together. It didn't look that great. There's a pheasant leg that's skinned.
Right, and a lot of meat on it. And you can see the fat. You can actually see the fat on there.
You know, this is a game farm pheasant that we got, about a month or so ago. And that pheasant has more fat on it than the turkey did that I got last week up in the UP.
Your
Really?
turkey was running and flying.
Well, one
Look at
game,
the size of the wing here.
yeah, wild game does not have a lot of fat on it. And, of course, those breasts right there, boneless,
Oh, yeah,
skinless
just-
breasts,
All meat is very, very good.
but they can dry out in
Yeah, if
many
you
methods
just
of
fried them,
cookery.
you bet. So we're going to put this coating over the top of this. Just kind of drizzle it over. Like you say, it doesn't look real appetizing, but it does cook down and browns up nice.
You know, it looks appetizing to me now. Tasting
Now
it.
that you've tasted it.
That's right. 350 degrees.
For 1 hour.
And you want to sort of baste it or
Yeah,
spoon
you
the
can
sauce over it?
Stir it around.
Okay, we have our normal
Clean
run-of-the-mill
plate club.
Operation Clean Plate Club here. Bob Garner, you want the back?
Oh, yeah. Heck. What was going to take the other piece?
The wing?
Yeah.
Well, we could maybe save that for you. You can pick on that. But this recipe, let me borrow the knife right here and cut into this pheasant leg. One problem with pheasant legs is the ligaments, and I can feel them right here as I'm cutting in.
Yeah, the meat is not tough at all.
Yeah, the meat's not tough, but those ligaments, these little bones, little tendons that connect the joints, can be a problem in pheasant. There's one right there. You want to pull those out. It's difficult to bone out the legs, but if you use a knife and a fork, you can pick the meat off of these, the thighs. Oh, they have more meat on them yet. Look at that.
Bigger
Good,
pieces.
tender, tasty chunk of meat. And this orange sauce, I'm absolutely crazy about. That's what it cooks down to be. And I guess I can almost taste those onions.
Yeah, oh, I can't taste the onions. Like I say, I taste the marmalade and the dressing.
You know, it's not only, the orange sauce tastes a lot like a barbecue sauce, too. It's not really, I don't like a lot of real fruity sorts of sauces, but this is really like a barbecue sauce, really good.
Rose Hines, that is a winner. And there's still some time in pheasant season. I hope you can get outdoors. Maybe get a pheasant, but the outdoors is a great place to be. We'll see you next week. New pheasants won't live in the farm fields. They'll live in the woods with the grouse. The Sichuan birds could conceivably even become a pest to orchards, eating the buds or digging up seeds from newly planted fields. And if we're waist deep in them, well, we'll have to use smelt nets to thin them out. I do hope they work, though. Despite my lack of enthusiasm, not every pheasant hunter shares my feelings about a pheasantless opening day.
Nothing.
You mean you're still going?
Sure.
Will you ever stop pheasant hunting?
Oh, yeah.
When?
When they get 6 people to carry me away.
Tim Farragon, a pheasant hunting diehard, the last of a vanishing breed in Michigan outdoors.